First of all, we have Mike Chop, Senior IT Architect from Cadence. We have Tony Sagal, Senior Manager, Digital Media Operations and Infrastructure with Oracle. Eric Hards, Manager, Web Media Graphics and Streaming for Lockheed Martin. And Larry Kless, Production Manager, Video Conferencing and Virtual Events with Kaiser Permanente. Help me welcome our panel. We're going to go down the row and let the panelists kind of give you a 2-minute intro of what they do and what their departments do, and then we'll get into some detail on how it happens. Mike?
So my name is Mike Chop. I'm a senior IT architect for collaboration technologies at Cadence Design Systems. I kind of describe ourselves as the team that comes up with strategies and implementation strategies around any rich media that touches our network. We started our group implementing webcasting, but quickly took on telepresence, link, UC, and any real-time technologies like that we're involved with.
Okay, thank you. Tony?
Tony, Senior Manager, Digital Media Technology at Oracle. We are part of the marketing organization, and our primary responsibility is managing the technology and infrastructure around digital media. So we manage edit suites, the studio, all the infrastructure around webcasting, transcoding, delivery of media, and we have separate teams that manage the creative side of things, but our goal is to support them with the technology that best suits what they're trying to deliver. My background is video production, went to film school, and having done that in Silicon Valley, I got into streaming media early on in the last decade. So really followed the trends and technologies that have been used. Some events, I'll just give you a little background of some of the events I've done and what I do today. Was involved in broadcasting Wimbledon live a few years ago, 12 live streams up at the same time, all pay-per-view, DRM, Indy 500. And then this year at Oracle, we were running with iOS streaming to mobile devices, both iOS, Android, HTTP adaptive bitrate to the browser, and higher bit rates to set-top boxes like Boxy. So they've been involved in a lot of different kinds of streaming architectures and protocols. Oracle, we're always looking for to try to do everything better, and so we're looking always at new technologies, evaluating them, different platforms, and working with new vendors and trying to improve our delivery roadmap.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Eric?
I'm Eric Hards. I'm currently the manager of our streaming media and animation department for our space systems division. Previously, I was in our enterprise operations environment, responsible for the enterprise implementation of our streaming environment. In my current duties, I do a lot more handling of not only the IT side of it, but also the production side of it. So I have a team of folks that we produce internally, mostly our webcasts for our executive leadership, all the way down to whoever wants to do one. But I'm also responsible for the enterprise architecture for Lockheed Martin and combining that hopefully into one cohesive unit. So I'll talk about that a little bit.
Cool. Larry?
I'm Larry Kless with Kaiser Permanente, and if you heard of Kaiser, a healthcare company. And what I do, I was just listening to both Tony and Eric, and do a lot of similar. I have my backgrounds in film, and I've been working for Kaiser for like the last 20 years. Primarily the type of production, it's all internal communication, runs the gamut from education to corporate comm. And the migration has been primarily from video conferencing, because we've had a big video conferencing network since the early 90s. And that's moved online. So people want video online, they want their communication, so that's where it's gone. So what I do is I manage the live event, similar with lights, cameras, truss, pipe and drape, all that stuff, to the virtual event as well, to the attendees that are watching remotely. Try to create a great experience for people in the room and people outside the room. And like I said, the similar clients, all internal, and we run a bunch of different platforms that we're using. So it's great to be here.
Thank you. We have a lot, you can see we have a lot of unique and diverse experience up here. And yesterday in our morning session, when we talked about best practices for consulting and choosing the technologies, we sort of talked about all the different technologies and how you recommend. What we want to do today is drill down even tighter on webcasting. And our first question for the panel is, what kinds of company events seem to fit the best for webcasting for your employees? And you can see they're all, the experiences are very different, so I think we'll get some interesting answers from each of the individual panelists. And Tony, we'll start with you.
Sure. We do both internal and external webcasts. We have different networks that handle each type of event depending on security required. So internal, obviously, there's different security around that, different delivery mechanism, different player platform to do that. The types of events we deliver internally are usually town halls, leader of a business unit disseminating information to a large group of people, one way. Lately, we've added chat to ask a question to the mix. So there's sort of one-way communication. A user can, a viewer in the audience, web audience, can submit a question, which we pass on to a producer who may pass that question on to the actual speaker panelist that they can give the feedback immediately during the live event. So all hands meetings, variety of business units. Sales is a large organization that tends to have a regular webcast with us internally. We also do town halls, which lately have become very popular by our president, Mark Hurd. He's a very strong proponent of live webcasting. So we have a regular monthly town hall with him, which is the highest attendance that we get for an internal webcast, upwards of 5,000 people. It's relatively small considering our organization is a little over 100,000, but 5,000 is a lot for our kinds of internal webcasts that we typically do. And then we have another kind of internal, like we had one this morning, where it's actually an external event. That's the primary target audience, but we expect a large component of employees might want to watch that as well. So because of network bandwidth, we are required to do a multicast internally, and so we don't want too many employees joining the external stream over VPN or LAN. So this morning we provided a separate multicast and actually unicast stream for VPN users at a much lower bit rate. So that's side of our third, another model of internal event. It's actually an external, but we deliver internally.
Great, thank you, Eric.
So very similar. A couple of things I was taking some notes as Tony was talking. One of the types of events that we've just started adding primarily from an affordability perspective is using the VTCs that are stationed throughout the corporation to do webcasts. So instead of having my team go to on campus or do travel to another state for that matter, we'll bring them into a VTC room or even at their desk. We have a lot of desktop VTC units, and we're also taking advantage of Cisco's Mobi client so that we can use little HD web cameras so that they can actually sit at their desk and we pick up the webcast on our own VTC encoder and broadcast that out. So that's actually working really well.
I do the NPR thing. VTC is virtual.
Oh, teleconference.
From teleconference.
Sorry, too many acronyms, especially at Lockheed, I'm sure. But yeah, so virtual teleconference. So we're doing that a lot. I mean, we do all the standard stuff. We do the executive webcast. We do the director webcast. We do a lot of training captures. I'm getting more calls from a lot of our diverse locations, places that don't have support, so they want to disseminate their information, but they don't have anyone on site, which is why we're doing more of the VTC type things. And that's working very well. It really does keep the cost down. And it really looks the same. It's a talking head in front of the video.
So yeah, Kaiser, again, a healthcare company, so a lot of the same what you've heard, whether it's executive communications, all hands meetings. Our IT organization is probably the one area that has been doing the most communication in terms of executives speaking to staff, updates and things. In my time too, because Kaiser again is healthcare, we've actually done a couple live surgeries, which is a whole different experience. This was quite a while ago, but literally having cameras in the OR, whether it's a knee surgery or a radical prostastectomy, but people were watching and it was two-way. That's now gone and migrated to the web. We're a Cisco shop. It's certainly not a personal endorsement of Cisco, but we've got telepresence, video conferencing, formerly Timbre, and WebEx. And really WebEx has become our webcasting platform. We don't have an internal video platform. We don't have an internal CMS. We're an organization of 160,000 employees, but we really don't have any internal system except what's software as service. So WebEx, we've really been kind of trying to push the limits in bringing video into WebEx for engagement, and it's really become a really great tool for education. I'd also say too, we talk about webcasting, as everybody knows who's been webcasting, it's not all about video. Audio is a big piece, so a lot of my support has been around trying to make the experience better, just to get better sound pickup. So some of the support we've been doing is primarily big room conferences and then bringing that to microphones and telephone hybrid devices, so it's not just a single Polycom in a room of about 50 people. So trying to make just an audio-only experience.
That's right. How miserable
great.
is that?
I know, isn't it?
Excellent. Thank you, Larry. Mike?
So I think that kind of the foundation for our webcasting infrastructure has been lecture capture. And so, when people ask me, if you're starting out in rich media for your enterprise, there's a lot of power between delivering the slides with synchronized video and audio. That's where we kind of built a lot of our success and grew out of that. One of the interesting trends that we haven't talked about here in this panel that's come out for a lot of IT organizations, kind of in the medium size and even the larger businesses, is that a lot of the IT business units are being asked to go out and do revenue generation. For example, we rent out compute cycles out of our cloud. We do consulting for our partners to help them to not only install our software, but we'll actually go in and tune their networks for them to run our software better. So one of the big trends in IT today is really figuring out what type of business units can go out and do revenue generation for IT. And so we figured out by a lot of the conference work that we're doing, by stuff like this, going out and webcasting and doing content generation, creating content for retrospectives or interviews, we started doing this for our partners as well. So by leveraging the fact that we're going out and doing large conferences, we'd reach out to our partners and extend our services out to do the same thing for them. And that was actually kind of nice for us because it not only enabled us to grow our business, but it looks good on the balance sheets for if you're not necessarily making a lot of money for the organization, but if you're paying for yourself and you're showing revenue flow, it's a nice way to show that you're adding to the bottom line for your IT organization.
Thanks, Mike. So we've heard, the things you would expect to hear, all hands meetings and the general, sort of one world communications that you would hear, that you would expect in an enterprise type situation. Then we heard some other really, unique uses like live surgery, and that's an interesting concept about IT revenue generation and how webcasting can sort of unify that effort. And so I think we're hearing a common theme here about unifying our message and our one world concept by using webcasting. I'm interested in drilling down a little bit further, particularly around the technologies that you all have. As we go through an enterprise, we see everybody's got something and they don't necessarily always work together. And so I'm interested in the partnerships that you've developed and how you kind of herd the cats and get all of these not only technologies but dispersed groups of people working together to make a webcast happen. Eric, you want to start us off?
Sure. Actually, that's pretty poignant right now because I'm in the process of, we have roughly 5 business units within Lockheed Martin. Each business unit is a silo primarily, although we have one overarching enterprise IT organization which provides shared services, the network, the servers, the back-end databases, those types of things. However, the webcasting systems have been primarily driven from the business unit. So each business unit went out, bought their own environment, their own servers. They're managed by our enterprise environment, but they're paid for by the individual business units. So That's been going on for probably about 10 years. And each time, of course, each business unit buys additional servers and additional licenses and works with different vendors. So I've been kind of spearheading the idea that, we can't keep going this way, because for those of you who came from the web development environment, you know that we had web servers under desks 15 years ago, completely unsecure and growing logarithmically. So I know we're heading down the same path with our streaming media initiative. So I did manage to get all these groups together. We came across and put together a set of requirements that we all felt we could live by. And in this process, we found out that several of the business units were using the same technology, Sonic Foundry's media site. So we're now looking at the possibility of combining those groups into a single organization. But it's been very interesting working with not only the people who are like us, the people doing the production and responsible for the actual events, but each of them having their own IT organizations and be very interested about, well, is it going to be secure? Is it going to be able to not take down the network? And so essentially hand-holding is what I do. I go through and I say, let me tell you about the system. And so it's like evangelism, essentially just saying it's not going to destroy your network. It's going to be secure. It's okay. So I've been doing a lot of that, and it's actually paying off. What's interesting is we're in an environment at Lockheed right now, as you're all aware, with the budget cuts, and we're our biggest customer is the government. So when they cut, we cut. So everyone is now interested in saving money. So I get calls from people saying, hey, we really like this idea. How do we get rid of our servers so we can be on your platform? So I'm getting a lot of that driven now to me, as opposed to having to go and get these folks. So it is kind of exciting internally if we can ultimately develop a system that everyone can use.
And a toll gate outside your office door would be really good.
Yeah, no kidding. That would be revenue generating, right? Yeah.
First
So,
one for
I like
that.
that.
I love it. Larry.
Yeah, so we actually have a big, quite a big team. I was just thinking about an event we did last week, which was our IT summit. And at the end of the event, the clients were thanking a group of about 50 people. And that actually wasn't everybody. So just trying to think of all the different groups. We've got, in this case, we've got the communications folks that are doing most of the cat herding, if you will, the content herding, getting all the presentations, getting all the speakers lined up, whether they're internal or external, booking the venue. Just like an event like this, we're at a hotel working with house, AV, video crew. In my role, I'm that producer. So I'm working and I bring in in-house staff, basically to staff the event, from video direction to cameras to the full multicam switched live event. And it just really runs the gamut, whether it's the webcasting team, AV, IT, communications. And then for the webcast component, like we would have webcast project managers as well as just a webcast team. So in our, behind the curtain, our video village, people always say, wow, there's so many monitors, there's so much equipment back there. And it really does take a big village to do events like that. We're doing a live webcast, but we're also doing a live recording as well. So in terms of, say, tips and tricks and best practices, we're always looking at redundancy, and we're also doing a high-quality recording that could be used afterwards. So we're doing the low-bandwidth webcasting, somewhere in the tune of like 300K. Sometimes our video stream is even about 150. Still looks good as Windows Media. But we're still doing a really high-quality recording, digital recording that will then go to the customer's website or on a DVD still, or other other formats. But yeah, it's and the last thing I'd say is very similar to what Eric said. We have a virtual team, the virtual events delivery team, which is IT, which is AV, which is multimedia, internal, and that is at the point where we're a couple different departments that have banded together, and we're kind of at the point where we could merge into one department. The organization already has seen virtual events is the term they've been using, and this time next year we might have the virtual events department.
Wow.
Interesting.
Mike.
Yeah, so I kind of echo the same thing we're kind of saying is redundancy is always a good thing. So we do the same thing where we're webcasting. We're always doing an HD recording of the event as well. We probably spent the last year making converting our infrastructure to handle HD, at least on the recording side, so that we can have high quality archives. I think in terms of what we're trying to build today, I know our team is really taking in lots of different pieces of collaboration. So we have a webcasting piece, which is our lecture capture. We're tying that into our unified communication system, which is OCS and Link today. We have online meetings, which is WebEx, Live Meeting, and Adobe Connect Pro. And we also are tying in telepresence for people who are doing rooms. And so a lot of the challenge that I'm kind of having today is really figuring out how all those pieces connect, because that's kind of the strategy that we've been trying to build. It's like any time that you have any rich media touching the network, it either needs to talk to each other or it needs to play nice with your network. I think the things that we're adding that are going to become important in the next the next 12 months is going to be where to put user-generated content. So a lot of our engineers or a lot of the people that need to communicate like to do things like Camtasia. So screencasting is very important in our organization. Having a good central place to put all that content, have it available to everyone is a big challenge for us. The other thing that it's kind of the dark horse in terms of what we're trying to plan for, we don't know what's going to happen yet, is what the social play is going to be. We know that it's going to be a system that's like UC, that's going to be over-encompassing, and it's going to have lots of ingress points of content going into the system. But it's not clear on what that system is going to be yet. Same thing with mobile. We're preparing, and we're seeing from our vendors getting ready to do the delivery to mobile devices, understanding on what to do with mobile devices that are owned by the company or not owned by the company. Bring your own computer type programs are issues that we're kind of dealing with and trying to figure out, if we decide to send live streams or distribute content to mobile devices, how is that going to play out and how is that going to work?
Thank you, Mike. Tony?
Yeah, so pulling off a webcast requires a lot of partners and collaborators. Our job in the digital media team is just kind of to oversee everything, work with all these variety of teams and groups to make it all happen. So for example, today's webcast out of New York, we had a producer who's very tech savvy, and so he arranged for the fiber, the satellite feed and fiber downlink to get it into our studio at headquarters. So we have that going on there. Once it arrives at headquarters, we have a production team that is basically responsible for getting the signal to our encoder. When we do a live webcast on site, there's directors, sound operators, video engineers, camera people. So there's all those people on the production side that are required. Then after that, we have our IT teams. So for example, we have these large webcasts at times, internal webcasts, and we send out an email notification to a large group of global IT organizations to let them know that there's an event coming up, make sure all your systems are up. So I just went in the other day and looked at the email that goes out, and there are 23 individual teams and groups on that email list just within IT that have some touch point to our web infrastructure that could affect a webcast. That's internal, and then we also have our external partners. So to deliver a webcast, for external streams and for our Akamai, internal stream, we use Akamai. Protected, so we work very closely with Akamai to configure their CDN to work the way we want it to. So recently worked very closely with them on getting the HD network up. So, and iOS, so we're streaming now to iOS devices using HTTP adaptive streaming to the desktop Flash players. So we work very closely with them on that. Then there's the Webcast Platforms. So we have different Webcast Platforms depending on internal, external. We're a close partner with Brightcove. We use them not only for live delivery for external events, but we also have an Oracle Media Network, sort of an external video channel. So it's powered by Oracle Brightcove players, and we use their platform to make that all happen. We have some custom coding in the back that has kind of made that unique for us. And then there's Adobe, our internal media server, Flash media server. We are one of the first enterprise companies to do Flash multicast. So we work very closely with Adobe on doing a lot of proof of concepts, tests to make that happen. Then there's other small collaborators, partners that plug into the mix. Vendors for subtitling, translation during Open World this year. In addition to all the various streams we had running and multiple bit rates we had running, we did live translation and transcription on our keynotes. So Subply was a company that we used to plug into our Brightcode players to make that happen. There's metrics, Site Catalyst, an Adobe product we use to do some metrics tracking. Anyway, there's a lot of players in the mix to get it from one end to the other, and then our DMT team kind of oversees everything and make sure all the pieces are in place to make it a successful event.
Thank you, Tony. I think the big thing that we heard here is this specific role clarity. There's so many players and so many systems and all of that. I think it's a repeated theme that you've heard everyone say, that everybody's very clear on their role and their part in that, whether it's unified in the communications or redundancy or any of those things, that role is very clear. I'd like to add one more component to it just from personal experience, and that's end-to-end testing. Once the technology folks have set everything up, it really pays you a lot to just turn your business unit loose, the people that are actually using it, and let them do a complete end-to-end test. But just with, it can be, you can just plug in a vBrick and, send some content. It doesn't have to be an actual event. But what you want to do is test end-to-end to see if there's anything that was overlooked or we've actually found a situation once by end-to-end testing that a particular area hadn't been touched and it affected a whole bunch of other things, and so it was really a good thing to turn the business unit loose and go, here, practice, and you never know what you'll find, and that's always a good practice as well. So Tony, you started us off, you said the magic M word. So let's get down into the weeds, or thorns is probably more like it, about metrics. And as we were preparing for the session, Mike Chop asked the other panelists a really good question. What are good metrics for stickiness? That's his term for improving attention span. And Mike, if you can just give us an example of what you're trying to get at, and then what we'll do is go down the line and have the panelists kind of talk about some things we heard, and then we can talk about some things we heard yesterday.
Yeah, so one of the things I've been working on is metrics for our YouTube channel. So on our webcasting infrastructure, we can measure things like attention span or stickiness, which is when someone watches a video, it's how far do people get through in the asset, how far do they watch it. So we kind of view that as a very important metric, as well as subscription and click-through. So the thing I was kind of asking because your external video web presence, there definitely needs to be, you definitely need to be on YouTube. Even if you're doing something on an OVP like Brightcove or Yala or something like that, we actually mirror all the content in YouTube. So all of our public content, no matter how we distribute it, whether or not it's through cadence.com, or whether or not that's on our iTunes channel, or whether or not that goes on partner sites, all that content mirrors on YouTube. The issue that we've had on YouTube is the metrics are a little bit sparse. So you can measure click-through and you can measure subscription, but you get a very holistic view of your of stickiness. So you basically can only know whether or not you're doing above average or below the average of self-referential people in your category. So we put ourselves in technology and news, so you'll know whether or not your ad set does better or worse than that average. So the question that had come up to the panel is, well, how else are you guys doing that metric?
Yeah, that metric would be, besides stickiness, engagement would be another word that would apply, or take away. How much did they retain? Tony, you want to start?
Yeah. So we measure primarily 3 distinct streams when we do an event. We have our internal multicast. We measure that. I'll get into what we measure in a second. We have to measure our VPN stream, how many people are viewing that, and then we have an external stream sometimes when we have an external event. So each, we use sometimes different tools to view each. So right now we pretty much have been going with unique views. It doesn't tell you a whole lot. It has really nothing to do with stickiness, because you don't know if somebody came for a minute and got bored and left, or if they stayed the whole time. Then there's also peak concurrent. So we're always back and forth, which is more important. So it's always easy to see peak concurrent, during the event. So while we're running an event, we get pinged quite often by producers. They want to know how many people are watching. So it's always easy to give them, immediately peak concurrent. But then later, post-event, you may find that unique was much higher because even though you may have 1,000 peak concurrent, we find at the end there were actually 1,200 people because we find out later that some came and went and they weren't really a part of the peak concurrent at that time. So that's one of the main metrics we use for all our streams. So internal multicast, we have to rely on it's an internal server, it's not hosted, we don't do our internal multicast with an external CDN. So we rely on our media platform analytics tool to tell us that. And then with VPN, since it's a stream running through Akamai, we can actually go to Akamai to get that number. And we also get it reported through media platforms since that stream runs through that player as well. So sometimes we do some math to subtract the two to figure out which is more accurate. And then for external, it's exclusively Brightcove metrics since it's running through Akamai. We also, from media platform, can get how many people are coming from specific countries, which is usually not asked by our producers, but that there's actually a map of the globe, and it will tell you by country how many people are watching in each location. That's based on the IP address that they're using. And then and also in media platform, I noticed recently there's a metric for how long people watched, and that's something that I think we should, our group will start to pay more attention to, and need to talk with the vendor more about how accurate that is, and if it's fully developed. You never know. You never know how accurate it is until you really get some metrics and do some testing around it. But that's a metric that we really aren't using yet that I'd like to explore more. Is it there's actually tells you how long people are viewing.
So a couple of things. We're not really doing anything much more as far as tracking, but from a tips and trips perspective, I track a lot of other things personally that the systems aren't giving me. Like for instance, how many events, what they cost, how many people were involved in those events, what was the message, so that at the end of the day, when I need support to get a new system, to look at how robust the network is, or how do we do network upgrades, I'm able to go to our executive leadership and say, here's the logarithmic curve that we're seeing over the last 12 months. That I can show them, we started with 10 events this time last year, we're now at 50 events this time last year. So by showing that, it allows me to usually win my case much easier. So I certainly report on unique views when we're doing webcasts. I actually have a rule of 50s when I try and set my expectations for my customers, because they'll invite 1,000 people and expect 900 to show up. So I give them the rule of 50s. Now this is essentially how I get to the fact that 10% of an invited audience is a good webcast for most of our folks. So the rule of 50 essentially says, and you can move these any way you want, the 50% of your invited audience can't attend. Essentially, they've got other things they have to do. They're doing their work. 50% of that number that's left over. So if you start with 1,000, you're now at 500. So 50% of the 500 are folks that don't care. They can attend, but they don't want to. So now you're down to 250. So of the 250, another 50% of that 250 can't watch. They literally don't have the technology. They're not in front of a computer, whatever the case that happens to be. So you can move those around any way you want, but my metrics have shown that between 10 and 20% is what you get out of an invited audience, and we've seen that consistently over 5 years period of time. The only way we've been able to increase those numbers is, one, we're going to talk about layoffs, or we're going to talk about some new program we're going to win, or we give away an iPad.
Content is king, right?
and it only happens at the end of the webcast. So that's the one way to increase stickiness, Mike, if you give away the iPad at the end of the webcast. So, but literally, I have webcast after webcast that 10, 20% of the kinds of numbers. If I see more than 25%, I say, congratulations, you must have been talking about something great to get those folks involved. So that was one thing I wanted to mention. But the importance of metrics, at the end of the day, if you're not tracking, you should be. Because it's not about just determining if the stream got there. You're going to need those to support your equipment, your servers, your network, financial investment. inevitably it's a graph I only have to show on a PowerPoint chart, and they go, wow, we didn't realize that. So track your metrics.
So good, thanks, Eric. Larry?
Yeah, so I was thinking a bit about what Mike had brought up about attentiveness, stickiness, and in terms of the webcasting that we're doing, really video, they say it's supposed to catch on, so we're using video. And by all, having that video window, being able to see the presenter, see their facial expressions, see them, move to the stage, it's dramatic in terms of the attentiveness. Real-time chat as well, having not just submit your question and it goes off into the Netherlands. We use WebEx, so WebEx has that real-time chat where you actually can have somebody talking in real time. And another tool that it has, which is kind of unique to WebEx, is there's an attentiveness button. So you could actually see if the WebEx browser is active on the person's desktop, on the attendee's desktop, versus they've got their email up, they're multitasking, they're listening but not actually paying attention. 75% is really good. And there tends to be pretty high attendance in a lot of these sessions, which tend to be all hands meetings. We did one recently. It's the last 5 years we've done a recruitment event, which was one I forgot to mention. So we have a department that's recruiting new medical students to come to Kaiser to study, because Kaiser has teaching hospitals. And so we actually used livestream.com because the clients really wanted to have that real-time chat capability and take those questions and bring them then into the webcast, because rather than doing live call-ins, people were typing messages in, so those messages would come in through chat, be answered, and then sometimes make it up to the live Q&A panel. And that's been pretty extraordinary, just having that real-time communication, a community manager, if you will, as part of the conference to keep that channel open. All too often people just, they'll tune out. I've submitted 3 questions, they're dodging those questions. Versus, we got your question, it's in the queue, they may not get it, we'll answer it. So attentiveness is, I think that's gauged by, again, being not just broadcasting, but having a two-way communication. And then video.
Someday we'll catch on.
Yeah, it will catch on one of these days.
Thank you, Larry. So, Chop, we've heard choose the tools that will enable stickiness and attention grabbing, and then use the tools and the metrics that they provide, and then manage the expectations with Rule 50. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And we have a question right here. Hang on a second. Let's wait for Sharon to bring you the mic so we can get it on tape.
Thank you. I just had a quick question, and you kind of brought it up when you were talking about it, but before you talked about measuring metrics and everything like that with the webcast, but to gauge the stickiness, but are any of you involved, excuse me, with the actual production process of the webcast, where you can design entertainment features within the webcast to actually, give the people something to stick to it for? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, designing the content to get there. Like we were saying, content is king, and that is, I think some of us have a little bit of influence on that.
I could add something to that. So the thing that's been piquing my interest about metrics really is this problem that I'm having. The engagement factor for our lecture capture is extraordinarily high. This is the video and the PowerPoint-based presentations. So our vendor today is Sonic Foundry. The engagement factor for those types of presentations are into the 80 to 90%. The problem that we had is when we started going into video production and we started doing a lot of content creation that was video only, the difference in the attention factor was very high. So the stickiness factor to video only content was rating below 50%. And it was consistent that way. And so the thing that we're really kind of struggling with is trying to determine why that is. And I think holistically, some of the answer to that is the lecture capture systems are very interactive. They have chat built in. You can page through slides. There's a lot of interaction going on there where you can flip slides back and forth. So there's a lot of stickiness factor going on there, where a video asset is essentially a slider that lets you skip into a talking head. So I believe that there's a lot more work to be done to engage your audience when it's a video-only asset.
Anybody else have anything to add to that part?
The only thing I'd add from Lockheed's perspective is a lot of that is the expectations that cost money. So when we see additional production value added, we don't get as, although the stickiness may increase, the actual folks paying for it are not interested in adding that value. So that is an uphill battle for us.
Yeah, if I could add to that too. I've actually seen clients really taking slide creation to heart and actually doing design as opposed to just killing them with the bullet points, but actually going to some of these slideology presentations and the presentations and using photographs and more storytelling. And then actually adding video to the presentations, as well as adding video between segues. Different general sessions will lead with a video, just to kick things off, to bring people back in, and just to mix it up a bit. And every so often too, you get clients who really want to push the envelope and do like their town hall style late night with Dave Letterman. So that's always fun. We've done one of those as well, where they've just modeled the actual event like a TV show. So that was really fun. Our procurement department had done that.
We found that live chat can help assist in stickiness a little bit. It's actually I find it entertaining to watch what people say. I think people might find it more engaging when they can, even if they're not going to participate in the chat, to see what other people think. So I think while you're watching somebody speak one directional, you have no way of participating. But if you can see what other people are thinking during that broadcast, I think it's much more engaging for people.
Yeah, I think really one more quick thing, and we're talking tips and tricks, is to be wary of a little bit wary of the quality issue. Just because you're doing something in HD or you're going all the way in a full production environment doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to increase your engagement on it. Many times it can be the opposite. We've seen many times where many CEOs will try to do something that looks like, or is actually a CEO sitting in front of his iPhone or a flip camera or something like that, and doing something very engaging and personal, as opposed to something that's highly produced. So there's definitely a balance that you need to think about, and try not to fall into the trap that you think that production value is going to give you viewership.
Great, we've got about 2 minutes left, and we'll take a few more questions.
Okay, David Boyle with Oracle. So if you had 30 seconds with the head of your respective organizations, and they ask you, what's your biggest challenge in delivering video and audio content to your organizations internally, what would that challenge be in 30 seconds or less?
Good. Go ahead, John. We'll just go right down the line.
That's going to be, it's definitely the network, and it's definitely working with your IT organization to figure out how to deliver that signal, in our case, around the world.
Dave probably already knows the answer to this, but delivering internally over VPN, we have some challenges there. We've been doing it the same way for a decade, and we're working with our IT team to seriously take a look at other ways of delivering. We're restricted to an extremely low bit rate, 150 kilobits per second for audio and video. Wow. And people have to go through, connect to VPN. Now they're connecting through proxy servers, so there's just a lot of bottlenecks along the way. So we run into a lot of choke points and get a lot of, during a live webcast, majority of our feedback when we have a help technical difficulties link that they can help respond to us and let us know what's going on. It's almost always VPN, so we're working through that right now, coming up with different solutions.
Bottlenecks is our problem too.
Yeah, I would agree with Mike. We have this living, breathing, nasty animal called the network. What I would actually say is, we have a very robust network, and we have some phenomenal people working at Lockheed Martin. And when it works really well. The problem is they change it. And if I could tell him, how do we keep from changing it, then that's what would fix a huge amount of problems for us.
Yeah, network, it's got to be it. And it's the business model too. Kaiser Permanente is a healthcare organization, so the top priority is medical information, and that takes precedent over a live webcast. Having the pharmacy be able to pull up your record, or a doctor be able to see your patient records electronically, sharing the same network. That's it's got to be the biggest. And then also too, having a single entity to handle the webcasting. We don't have multicast, so we don't have a video platform to build on. So actually having a department, to take care of it all.
That's tough.
One-stop shop.
That's tough. We have time for one more right here.
So you guys have all talked a lot about the internal use case. You mentioned a little bit about the external use case. Are there any interesting or exciting or innovative ways that you guys are using video externally to shorten the sales cycle, to get prospects closer to buying? I used to work quite closely with Cadence. I know you guys did something a while back with demos on demand. Is there anything interesting or exciting people are doing?
With Brightcove externally, we have the ability to put a Brightcove player on a Facebook page, so we've done that in the past. The nice thing about that is the same stream. We don't have to do anything different. They just basically embed that on Facebook. So we have, using that platform, we have a variety of ways to get it out beyond just our Oracle.com landing page. So it's not like my decision to where it's published, but the business units who are doing the webcast have a lot of choices, in where they might want to publish a player. And then the Brightcove player itself has functionality to share, email the link, just have the end user, the viewer, distribute the link themselves amongst whoever they want to share it with.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would say that it's Facebook. The same way that we needed to embrace YouTube, we're doing the same thing for figuring out how to take advantage of the Facebook platform.
Help me thank, in addition to thanking our panel, help me thank our production crew. They've been great for my 3 sessions, and I want to thank them very much. Thank you.